Monster Hunter 1 began with a bang. The hunts were tough, but we couldn't get enough. The second gen changed a lot back then. New weapons, mechanics, and ways to play, consuming day after day. Gen 3 took the plunge, took us deep down below. Love it or hate it, the sea let horizons grow. The fourth went up instead, mountain and climbing. I hope you're enjoying this rhyming. Not done yet, Hunter styles and arts helped stave off the carts. 5th gen and world changed everything down to its core, and to this day all it is I adore except Iceborne's clutch claw. Rising up with wire bugs and switch skills gave proper thrills, but now it's gone. Out of all of these though, which ones will carry on? Hello, my fellow hunters, greetings, salutations, and a third way of welcoming you. How are you doing this fine day without much, perhaps, Monster Hunter to play? Though that's not true, is it? Because, let's be honest, every Monster Hunter game of every Monster Hunter gen is still very much a worthwhile experience, even going all the way back and experiencing, let's call it the quirky charm, or hellish pain, that is the very first Monster Hunter. Every single version iteration as we went through the years added and changed and evolved it all in a way that while it all contains this same core of familiarity, there is a distinct reason to play any given entry, and I think that's so special, where generally you can agree I think they get better as we get towards now, with 5th gen being the best overall gen, but every gen still feels like Monster, but every gen offers something you can't get anywhere else. It's a really nice mix of familiarity and difference as you go through the years. But what am I getting at here? Well, as you might have clocked in from the intro, the one specific thing that now tends to happen ever since, I would say, the 3rd gen with underwater combat is we get a sort of game hook, a game gimmick to run through the current Monster Hunter and give us a mechanic to play with across both the base game and then evolving it into the G-Rank Master Rank expansion. It was underwater combat, and then it was climbing and mounting, then it was Hunter Arts, then it was world just, completely revamping, but then it was the Clutch Claw, and now it was the wire bugs and the free climbing and the switch skills and all of that stuff. There's a few more in there that are like minor gimmicks, but I wanted to look ahead then to Monster Hunter 6 and essentially ask the question, which, if any of these, should either be kept if it's from the 5th gen, or brought back if it's an older one that has since been left behind in the past. And, well, I've got 5 that I would love to see again. Starting with... Right? How many of you had a reaction there of, oh yeah, that was awesome! Oh my god, yeah, I'd forgotten about that, so cool! And it is so cool, bond attacks! I really want them to make a comeback, to keep happening, to just be a constant in Monster Hunter. I realize that you might think that A, it's just a variation on Turf War, but I don't think that's inherently true. I think they represent something obviously, very different. Turf Wars are an aggressive fight for conquest. Bond attacks are, the epitome of working together in a harmonious way, pretty much, but I think it can be evolved into something that's very much more meaningful. I think seeing monsters work in a more inherently cooperative way, if they are a species or group of species that is inclined to do that, would be a real charming and fun thing to add to Monster Hunter. I guess you could almost say, like, the Curios and Malzeno are in a sort of perpetual bond attack, and that sort of flows, but that original Lunastra Teostra spectacular as they dance their flaming dance, give Rathalos and Rathian one of them. That would be amazing. and you don't have to restrict it to just the distinct monsters that have such extreme dimorphism between the genders. You could just have a pair of the same species team up on the hunter. Hell, you could have two monsters that, you know, vaguely get along and can tolerate each other, work together with the hunters. Or even as an extension of this, something like All Mother Noah, where technically it was like a perpetual bond attack with Ibushi and the sort of killing him and absorbing his power sense, but I like the idea of a monster using another monster in a positive way over just having a quick scrap. I think there's some real merit to that, and I would love to see more examples of it represented as they can more and more bring their vision of the ecology and lore and world and nature of Monster Hunter to life, which is something they've said they've always wanted to do and could finally properly explore in World onwards. Next up then, you might feel is a little bit of a cop-out, but I do want to expand on it.
This is the ultimate turf war of ultimate destiny. Monsters, hunters, and their clutch claws as far as the eye can see, and only one will survive. I wonder who it will be. This is the ultimate turf war of Iceborne destiny.
Turf Wars! Yes! How could it not be, right? Turf Wars count. They are a generation gimmick, something that World introduced, a thing that happens now. They are as core as just being able to climb up surfaces or do jumping attacks. And we know this because Rise and Sunbreak continued to have them, even if Wyvern Riding, which I suppose is another core gimmick of Rise and Sunbreak, but not as main as switch skills and wire bugging around in general. But what I'm getting at is I'm hoping that their addition in Rise and Sunbreak, despite it being made by the Portable team, is something that now just is a fixture in Monster Hunter, that it would be weird to get a new monster in a game that doesn't have Turf Wars, that it's just standard to be expected in any fully open map monsters are interacting game, and I really want that to continue. And I really hope that however Monster Hunter 6 turns out, it is done in a way that they can happen, but in a freer sense. I don't think they necessarily need to have the pop-up Turf War player scripted animation, which looks amazing, and I'm so glad it happens, but I imagine a world where you can have much more natural and dynamic monster fights, where essentially having two monsters and you in a zone turns it into, for 5 minutes or so until a monster naturally leaves, a 1v1v1, a free-for-all, where everyone kind of naturally goes back and forward at each other. And yes, I know monsters do turn and throw an attack at another one, but again, that's just kind of generically throwing it, and there's no real interaction or reaction or impact. It obviously doesn't look as good as the scripted Turf Wars, but if you could just have that flow as a proper free-for-all bout that enhances the hunting experience in that way, I think you could really make something of that. And honestly, that could be a generational gimmick of itself, really turning up how the monsters interact with each other and the environment as a real factor you have to consider and deal with while hunting. Following Turf Wars staying and evolving then, I actually want to go to switch skills. Out of everything Rise and Sunbreak introduced, all of their unique little quirks, everything I liked, everything I didn't like as much, though that said, that's really not much at all, the one thing I would like to see continue, at least in some form, is switch skills. The core concept that you can alter the moveset of your weapon in a way that suits you to give it a slightly different flavor and feel and playstyle while still being at the core the weapon that you fell in love with. I think it was a genius idea, and it did feel like a natural evolution of styles and hunter arts, as a lot of them do borrow from that from Generations Ultimate. So it would be really good, at least in my mind, to have that sort of continue. Then in Monster Hunter 6 we get an even further refined evolution version of this ability to modify and customize the actual hunting ability of your hunter with a weapon in a really fluid way. Something that just flows into your natural movesetiness without being sort of this external press button do special attack. I think there's some real merit in that, and the idea of playing like base world, but you could start surge slashing on your greatsword is a really neat one to me, and I think there's still so much room for exploration here, and I don't think a lot of you would complain if you got to keep all of the neat things the Rise and Sunbreak weapons can do into the next more World and Iceborne-like evolution that Monster Hunter 6 is, I would assume, likely is going to be. That is something I think would really enhance Monster Hunter just generally going forward, and I think there's a decent chance that this one actually does continue and happens. After that then, this one might be a contentious take, it may be a hot one, it may be a Dia Moralis in the ocean, but, well, the ocean it is, underwater combat. I know this one has been beaten like a dead Kirin, but at the same time it is one that does bear mentioning. I think underwater combat was fine in the finest of ways, right? It was just so fine. It could not exemplify that more to me. It was interesting, it was fun initially, it did give you this whole new experience of hunting, like properly three-dimensionally around you. It did a lot, and it let you have monsters in a way that you've never seen them before. The ability to have them all swimming around you, agile and fast, while you feel so out of place. I mean, it really did create a cool atmosphere and effect. I just think that they did it, you know, 3 generations too early. I really do believe that underwater combat done in Monster Hunter 6 onwards in a World Iceborne-esque setting with a fully open map, I mean, just imagine how that would go, and give you a lot more ability to actually control yourself underwater, to make it almost, ironically, more similar to being on land despite being technically underwater, is a win-win. We get to experience this other world while also getting to experience the monsters that lets us fight, pure aquatic creatures, but not losing any actual mechanical fun or playability. I've often thought a Monster Hunter game set at the bottom of a ocean, where the hunter wears, you know, Zelda-esque iron boots, so you permanently walk along the sea floor, so that from your perspective the combat is, you know, normal land combat, you're just technically underwater, so swimming monsters would be the same as flying monsters in a normal setting. They can swim up above you, but you're still on the seafloor way down, fighting them and treating them like they were a flying monster above you on land, but with a few little twists because it is water, so perhaps you could, you know, jump off the floor, as it were, and slowly float back down, and have that kind of edge to it, but essentially create a situation where we can have normal grounded combat in an underwater environment to essentially get the best of all worlds. I think that's such a cool win-win-win, and would enable some really cool environments and monster designs and entire mechanical ways of fighting. A proper deep-sea frontier-esque adventure that doesn't come at the cost of floaty sort of awkward weapon controls. It might be a pipe dream, but I think it is definitely a fun one to think about. Finally then, at number 1, and this definitely supersedes everything, and you might hear this and go, oh, come on. And I'm sorry, but I've got to say it, at number 1, the gimmick that I think we should get is something new entirely. Yeah, I know. Obviously, I can't really say much for this, because it doesn't exist yet. Only Capcom know what it's probably going to be already, as they've been working on it for years. So, that's kind of where I'm at. As good as all of these previous ones are, as much as I think they can be kept and evolved and changed and upgraded and redone for us, I don't think anything can compete with just purely, you know, doing something new. Some of them might be better, some of them might be worse, but they're all incredibly interesting to get to grips with and to experience, and none of them have been, you know, purely bad. Even the Clutch Claw, which I would say is the worst of them all, definitely worse than underwater combat, but I think that actually we can just sit back and let them do their thing, as they have really yet to miss with a Monster Hunter game, and I think nothing that we ask to have a return to will really outdo some creative new way of actually experiencing the hunt that undoubtedly is on the way to us. So, with that kind of said, I would love to know your thoughts. If you could bring back or force to be in Monster Hunter 6 one of the previous game's kind of gimmick mechanics, what would you choose? For now then, like if you enjoyed this, subscribe and hit the bell for more. Consider supporting the future of the channel on Patreon down below. And until we meet again, a goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.